Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 27th, 2025 Joint Health and Ed and Budget Committee meeting. I will call us to order, and I will now defer to Chairman P., who will call his committee to order as well. Then we'll talk about some game rules.
At this time, the Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee is also open. Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. Please call the roll for Health and Ed.
Carl Boyd. Commissioner Davidson.
Here.
Commissioner Gooch. Here. Commissioner McMurray.
Here.
Commissioner Oliver.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Dodd.
Present.
Commissioner Phillips.
If you would, call the roll for budget members.
Commissioner Gooch. Here. Commissioner Harris. Here. Commissioner Irvin.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Piercy. Here. Commissioner Sereno. Here. Commissioner P.
Here.
Thank you, Teresa. We have no public comments signed up for tonight for either committee. Is that correct, Chairman P.?
That's what I've been told, no public comments.
The first order of business for Health and Ed, Vice Chair Wilson, is if you would consider the minutes of our last meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. I have reviewed the minutes from our previous meeting. I find them to be in order. Without objection, I move for their approval.
So moved and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Vice Chair. The next item of business that we want to knock out, well, first I do want to recognize the Board of Education. I see Ms. Rosales, Ms. Sharp, Ms. Maxwell, Mr. Tidwell, the board members from the and Mr. Vaughn. So thank you all for being here. I see some bus drivers, Trey Lee, Jeff Reed, Dr. Martin, Brian, thank you all for being here. We will now proceed, please, Dr. Sullivan, with two budget amendments that we will hear. And as you're coming, so budget committees, the Health and Ed Committee is going to hear these amendments. The Health and Ed Committee will consider them, ask questions, and vote. And then Mike's going to talk about our rule of order tonight.
So a couple things I want to make, a couple of announcements for clerical stuff. So tonight we have a PowerPoint that'll have the budget amendments on it. Everything that's there is also on your iPads, so that's in front of you. You can follow along on the PowerPoint on your iPads. Also in front of you for the Budget Committee members, you have the paper copies to put in your book, and then for any of the Health and Ed Committee members, we passed out papers. If you didn't get one, please let me know. So you should have three ways to look at it, but they should all be in order of how Dr. Sullivan's going to present tonight. But he'll have the detailed PowerPoint for the budget amendments. That's the only difference from your iPads, is those are going to be broke out separate on your iPads. But did everybody get a paper copy if they wanted one for tonight?
Mike, if you would, talk about voting, clarify to everyone how the two parties are going to vote.
So tonight, if it's okay with both committees, we'll do it the same as we did last year, whereas Health and Ed will hear, both committees will hear the item. Health and Ed will take up any action first. If they wish to send it on to budget or approve it and send it to budget, the Budget Committee will then have that option to vote on it, defer it, or take no action. There's no requirement of budget tonight. However, they can take action after Health and Ed votes, just like the normal processes we did last year. At that point, after Health and Ed votes, Chairman P would take over for any vote that would happen for Budget Committee. All that makes sense?
And questions can be asked from
either committee. If there's a motion to defer something from budget, it would go to Thursday night, which is 2 days from now, to take up then if there is a motion for that. And I think that.
So we're here first is two budget amendments that we typically hear at Health and Ed, and then there's a lag time, and then it shows up at budget. We're going to do those two. Robert, will you immediately entertain those after we vote?
If I don't hear an objection from the Budget Committee, I would prefer to look at these two amendments tonight. That way we've got them behind us. If for some reason the Budget Committee feels like we need to wait, that's not a problem, but I would prefer to go ahead and get those behind us. We're going to have a lot to do on the 29th.
Dr. Sullivan, proceed, please.
Thank you, Commissioners, and thank you, board members, for being here, and some members of our leadership team as well. So first, we have a budget amendment. The first one is for a charter school budget amendment. This amendment is to move the current charter school payment transfers of $3,367,842 from $99,100,590 transfers to other funds to $72,310,312 Board of Education contracts with private agencies per the Tennessee Comptroller's Office. Also, this amendment adds $500,000 to the $72,310,312 expenditure to cover the additional cost of the original budget for the charter school transfer. This increased cost will be funded from additional TISA direct funding RCS received from the state. And we are, and Mr. Smith can correct this if I'm wrong, we are the largest county school system that is audited from the State Department. And so there were a lot of questions about where funding needed to move regarding charter school allocations. And so this directly is from their request of where they wanted funds to, which accounts to go from.
And we have the next budget amendment listed on the agenda as well, if y'all want to take them up together.
That works for me. Health and Ed, y'all good if we look at both these together? They're both 141 and they're cleanups. Proceed, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you. The second one is a summer camp grant, This is totally funded from the State Department of Education. This amendment is to increase Fund 141 budgeted revenues and expenditures in the amount of $5,556,938 to recognize the awarded summer camp grant for the fiscal year 24-25. On January 22nd, 2021, the Tennessee General Assembly enacted the Tennessee Learning Loss Remediation and Student Acceleration Act to address the learning loss of students due to COVID-19 related school closures. Through this law, all Tennessee school districts are required to offer learning loss remediation summer programs for students in rising grades K through 8 starting in the summer of 2021. Provisions of this law were set to expire in the summer of 2023, including summer learning camps for rising grades 1 through 3 and after-school learning mini camps, stream camps. However, in the 2023 legislative session, the Tennessee General Assembly amended the act to continue summer programming and the learning loss bridge camps for rising grades K-9 annually. These funds will be used for summer work for principals, teachers, educational assistants, secretaries, and transportation. There is no local match required for this grant.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
Yeah, and we do not receive this until May, so that is why you don't get it until May. The second that we get it, our board has it before them, and then we start this next Wednesday.
Health and Ed Committee, and I'll entertain any discussion or questions of Dr. Sullivan or Mr. Runyon. Hearing no conversation, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve both amendments as presented.
Motion is second. Any further discussion?
Question.
Commissioner Oliver.
On the summer camp grant, you're saying this is to address learning loss due to COVID? Is that what you're saying?
That was the original intent. Now most of it is addressing early literacy, but it still does have a middle school required component. So we utilize most of our funds to address the K through 3 early literacy, but also the requirements for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students who haven't mastered proficiency yet.
Does this include students that are retained due to the law with the reading?
Yes. Yep.
And so they finish this program successfully, they are able to be promoted?
Depending on what they score, depends on which pathway they have to take. So if they score in a certain pathway, yes, they can be promoted for just summer. If they have a different proficiency rating, then they have to also include tutoring during the school year as well. But this provides that option for them to continue promotion.
And then did I hear Chairman Dodd say this is a cleanup?
This portion will, because this is adding funding to allow us to operate the summer school programming.
And no required match?
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you.
And the cleanup component I mentioned was properly putting the charter school in the correct fund per the audit. So thank you for clarifying that.
And, okay, so I was looking at the other one. So relative to the charter school one, these are funds that we have that you want to transfer to cover expenditures related to the charter school. Is that what you're saying?
They were already in our budget. We had them in a transfers out. The comptroller's office wants them in a different line. And so that's where we're moving those to.
And the difference of the 500,000 and the 3.367, where is that difference?
The 3.3 is already in another account, the 500,000 are additional students that
So
the charter schools are
you're
taking.
increasing just by the
Yes.
500?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions? Yes, Commissioner Irvin.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's okay to ask a question. Or is it,
that on
what's the
Chairman P? I'm sorry.
question now? It's a real quick one. It's a quick question. The 500,000 that's coming in, is that coming out of, is there going to be another TISA payment for this year? Or is this coming out of future TISA payments?
No, it's for our funding that we've already received. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so it's only coming out, okay, thank you.
That's not a question I had.
Seeing no further questions, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray?
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
At this time, I'm going to ask our Budget Committee to entertain these two motions. Do I hear any objections? We can defer this to the 29th. If not, I'm open for discussion at this time for these two amendments.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
You have a motion to approve both amendments
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Hear none, call roll.
Commissioner Piercy? Yes. Commissioner Sereno? Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson? Yes. Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Next item of business, we move into the presentation. You're going to go ahead and tab 13 for the budget members, Central Cafeteria. Is that first?
General update first?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we normally have with health and education a general update. Our main update is we graduated 4,500 seniors over, I guess, a week and a half ago at MTSU, Eagleville, and Life Point, and at Tucker Theater. So that was a great time for our school system. We are still in school. We finished school on Friday to the dismay of many of our staff members and many of our parents. It has a lot of social media traction right now. So just so that everyone is aware of why we are still in school after Memorial Day, we have a state requirement for students to go 180 school days, and 180 school days when you do not start until August, and you get a week for fall break, a week for spring break, 2 weeks roughly around Christmas break, and then a full week at Thanksgiving. You literally count the days, and the 180 gets us to Friday. Next year will be exactly the same when you have an early Memorial Day. Next year, Memorial Day is on May 25th, and so it will be a week long after Memorial Day again. It literally is just how the calendar falls. You are not allowed to use inclement weather days and ask the Commissioner of Education if you can just call it early and go home. We're not allowed to do that. So we have to continue. So it is tough this last week of school for everybody involved. So just wanted you to have that update. Ready to go into budget? Yes, sir. All right, budget, just to kind of give you an overview of where we are, and it's on the screen. So this is Brian and I's third year creating, but kind of fourth year, I guess, presenting portions of it. And so proud to be up here presenting our budget for you all. Thankful and proud of this budget due to collaboration and really the support we have with county commissioners, with our school board, with our central office staff, our principals, and then school level staff. And I want to take just a minute and go over how this process works. And so if you all have heard me talk about it, but I think it's important for the general public to know how this works as well. We start in the third week or second week of December, and we start by sending a request to all principals, and they have a statutory requirement to give us input on what they need around technology, instructional technology, software, staffing, building maintenance. They are then required to go and meet with their leadership team to get input. They submit that towards the end of January, depending if we have snow days or anything. We're a little bit flexible on those days. We take that information, our department heads and assistant superintendents get that information. They then have a couple more weeks to submit their requests. We compile all of that and we do a big, huge training with all of our principals and our central office staff that lasts several hours. We go over revenue, we go over expenditures from the previous year, we go over our account codes of where all of our money has to fit. We go over what the budget looks like just in general, and then we start by preparing a budget for our school board. We meet with our school board. We have a 2-day budget retreat to where we go over priorities for the school board, look at what our principals, our departments are requesting, and then we really start to analyze what does the governor's budget include, because that is our biggest source of revenue is the State Department's revenue. And we see what increase he has to the TISA base, and we start putting all of that together and cutting from requests, because people make lots of requests, and trying to figure out what is realistic along with what's the Board of Education's priorities, what is our instruction department's priorities, and what is our operational priorities, until we get to presenting our budget for our school board to approve. And that has to be done, of course, by May 15th. And then we get to you all today. So it truly is a 6-month process, and we keep our principals, our school board, our central office staff aware. It is truly I know you said you needed 3 educational assistants. In alternative instruction, you needed 1 teacher. Which one do you need the most, and explain to me why you need that. Our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Kelly Chastain, we are opening a new school this year, Poplar Hill Elementary School. And we'll get to a little bit more of this in a little while, but we transferred just about every position we possibly could to lower the cost to the taxpayers of opening a new school, because normally opening a school has a huge budgetary cost to it. I mean, we transferred over 40 teaching positions from other places in the county. And so that is something that we try to be very fiscally conservative and responsible with our budget. But we are a growing school system that does have needs. And so that's just kind of an overview of our budgetary process. We have a couple guiding principles. These have not changed because I feel like it's important for us to be consistent. We want to always increase our knowledge and understanding. I'm hoping by this point, 4 years in, or 3.5 years in, that our principals and our central office staff have a very good understanding of how our budget process works, where revenue comes from, how expenditures work. We want to be transparent. We always focus on people first. We believe people are more important than programs every day of the week. And we want to be fiscally responsible. This does have a request for the increase to MOE of $2.9 million, and that is truly to open our new elementary school. We have been talking about opening a new elementary school for a little bit over a year since it was approved, and we tried to lower that cost as much as possible. But it does, anytime you're opening a school, it does have an increased cost. And we'll get to that a little bit more. We did have some funding priorities this year, as we do every year. The first one this year was transportation. Staffing continually is the biggest part of our budget, and it matches our priority of people first. So we're always looking at our staffing models. Our buildings, we're always making sure we're maintaining our buildings to the best possible with the funding available. And then funding charter school, which is a continuing, evolving process for us. We've already talked a little bit about our budget calendar, and then we'll get into our budget overview, and then talk a little bit more just about our revenues and expenditures kind of in each different one. We talked about our budget calendar, but I did want you to see it is truly outlined for our principals and our central office staff and our school board. We follow our budget calendar as close as possible to be able to see truly where we are, and it does start in December, and it goes all the way up until when you guys finish, and we try to match it as quickly as possible. That is one of my biggest jobs in operating a $580-something million budget proposal this year. This is something that I take serious. It is something as a director of schools, that's why I'm so involved with it, because it is a huge aspect of the job, is to make sure that we are utilizing taxpayer funding to still get the results we do as a county school. So let's look at our budget overview, and then we'll go into each one a little bit more. So you're going to see 3 different ones. We're going to go over 143 first here in just a minute, and 143, our general cafeteria fund. Actually, we can just go ahead and skip to that.
May I ask a question before you
Yes.
move forward?
Yeah.
What are the board priorities? You spoke about the board having priorities. What are those?
Our priority this year, transportation, was overall number one. That's something we were looking at, was our transportation budget. And then we always have staffing and then buildings. We've tried to maintain our buildings and continually address our older buildings.
So what you have listed here is
Yes.
funding priorities are the
Yes.
board priorities?
Yeah, we
Thank you.
discussed that at our retreat. And if there's anything else the board members want to address at our retreat, you'll see that in our 5-year plan that we're going to discuss in June as well for our board. Our board has not adopted a new 5-year plan, but we've made a lot of progress thanks to the county commission's support, and we need to start looking at some of our older buildings to truly put them on the 5-year plan now. All right, so we are going to go to Fund 143, our Central Cafeteria Fund revenue. And I believe you said that was on tab, what'd you say that was, Commissioner Dodd?
13.
So tab 13. So this has a revenue of $26,844,250. The revenue for this is largely USDA and then payments from students and teachers and parents. It then has an expenditure of $33,503,092. That is a $6.6 million deficit. That, when you see it originally, can be very alarming. That does not need to be alarming. We have to have a plan to spend down our fund balance. It is a requirement to have a plan. Every year we have had a plan, and we have not necessarily spent down our fund balance as needed, because it is a healthy fund balance, but we always have to have a plan in place to spend that down. We are looking to do a couple things. Our plan to spend it down is to actually invest in new equipment, and then make sure that we are doing some renovations. We've already started at Roy Waldron, Laverne High School. We're doing some renovations of our cafeterias at some of our schools that were budgeted the last couple years, but were not actually taken to completion. And so those are some schools that we are looking to spend down this plan. And I know that's not a lot around 143, but it does not necessarily have a tax rate to it. It is self-sustaining, and it's in really good shape right now. All of ours have a 2.5% COLA increase to the table as well.
I do have a question. When you talk about spending it down, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So
When you say you're required to spend it down?
Yes, we are supposed to have between a 3 and 6 month operating budget in, because there's a lot of USDA federal funds, and we are currently sitting, do you know the revenue, there's 20 million still that we have in fund balance, and so it is way too high. And so we are required by the federal government and the state government to have a plan to spend it down. It's not a requirement you actually spend it down, but it's a requirement of a plan to spend it down. So every year we have a plan that you all approve, and you'll see the last couple years we've been at $4 million in the deficit, but we haven't necessarily gone to the deficit. So we just, again, have to have that plan to spend it down.
Can you, could that plan or could elimination of that cost include elimination of costs for children to eat at school?
Unfortunately, it can't.
Is that a
Yeah.
particular guideline that says
Yes,
you
it is.
cannot
Yeah.
offer
You want to address that?
to
I mean, it's
pay
federal
for the
guideline,
students? I can't hear you.
Yes. It's federal
Please repeat.
guideline. Yes, we're not allowed to do it with our USDA reimbursement. It's frustrating when you have the additional needs, but not allowed to use it for that.
I would like to see that information if I
We
could
can
get
find
that.
it. Yep.
Dr. Sullivan, what are some examples of how you might use those funds?
Equipment. We have older schools, and we need to address equipment, because you don't want to use funds to spend down on recurring costs. And so we don't want to address some of our buildings and add staff with this. We want to, we have an interim nutrition manager in Trey. Lee actually oversees this as well. Trey oversees a lot of areas. And so we have a meals per labor hour that we track. And we have schools, we want them somewhere between 15 and 18 of how many meals per actual employees they have per labor hour. So we track all of this, like we're running because we're running our own 49 or 48 different restaurants out there that we want to make sure that they're sustainable and operational. I don't think people realize how big of an operation Rutherford County is. It's a beast. I know you all do, but the general public, 143 is a beast in and of itself. And I'm happy to answer any other questions about 143. It is, again, it's self-sustaining.
And committee, you have the budget in front of you for 143, and we will, before we move on, we will consider 143, if that's okay with the committee, if Health and Ed's good with it.
Mr. Chairman, could I?
Yes.
I'll make sure it's appropriate to ask questions.
Yes, indeed, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so what's the amount of bad meal debt for this current school year, and is that number going up or down in this account?
Going up,
Okay.
roughly 900,000. And so it'll end close to $1 million.
About $1 million now?
Yep, it'll end close to $1 million, and we address that every way that we possibly can outside of taking parents to litigation, because then Knox has tried to take parents to litigation, and then you don't end up recouping your costs. You do. And so we try to encourage parents to fill out the forms they need to fill out, and we work with our cafeteria managers to reduce that cost as much as possible. And it's definitely one of our concerns that we continually try.
Okay, so it's about 900,000 this year, and it's increasing.
It is. It's increasing by.
There was a study a while back I've heard about, but I haven't seen.
Yeah.
You've probably seen it.
Yeah.
And so, what I'm hearing is you've gone through the study and you're basically implementing everything short of the one scenario, maybe it was more than one, that involved going to General Sessions Court and going through that drill that I think I've been told it was sort of worked out that you could go that route, but is that a decision the school board made, or how help us think through that, because that's a fair amount of money, and from what I've heard, the scenario was going to be they could send a letter, and amazingly, folks would typically respond.
Yeah, we of course we have our own notification process in place that goes through, and you're looking at a couple situations that usually are locations that usually have the large brunt of your trying to think of the right word, losses at your schools, I guess, that would have. That's a continued conversation that we would first need to have with our school board to see if that's an avenue that they would want to go down. We would then need to talk to our school board attorney, and then we would need to talk to our court system here again. A lot of things have changed since those conversations occurred. It's been 5 years where 2 school boards passed that and different judges in place. So not saying that's not an avenue that we'll never try, but definitely the parameters are different since then.
Okay, and as I understood, Commissioner Oliver had asked you about spending the money on basically students, if I heard it right, students who do not receive free or reduced meals, and that's not an option. Is that
Correct.
is that a federal requirement, or is
Correct.
that
To the best of my knowledge, federal. I'll go back with our school nutrition manager and check, but that has always been my understanding, is you could not go back and pay for your students who had bad meal debt from federal.
No, I'm not talking about bad meal debt at this point. I'm saying you've got a significant amount of money you've got to spend down.
Okay.
You've got a significant amount you got to spend down. And the question is, can that money be spent down for students who may not be on the program? I'm just trying to, it seems like we could help parents out a fair amount if that was available. And, and it would help us out in terms of spending it down.
My concern would be that would create a system that that would be the expectation, and we're not eligible for it to be able to do that long term. You have to be part of the community eligibility program, which is the CEP, and not all of our schools or district qualify. And so I worry if we do it in some places that we wouldn't be able to do it in all places like everywhere else, like some other counties do. We have looked at it previously, but it's not something our district has decided to go down in the past.
Just a follow-up to what he just said. I mean, isn't that similar to Title I? All schools don't benefit from Title I. So couldn't you look at the schools that would benefit from being able to cover meals for families that are challenged?
We can look at it. 143 is a little bit different because you have USDA. Our Title I schools aren't working with USDA funds. But I can ask our federal programs person.
And Dr. Sullivan, I think Mr. Smith might have a comment on that matter.
So there's a couple of requirements here. One, just so everybody's clear, USDA is a reimbursement-based grant. So they don't just send us money and so what you do is you submit the amount of meals you provided per pupil and you submit that and they send you money back. But what you can't do is charge a bunch of different prices because you also have to have reasonable price increases or you're not eligible for that grant. So while yes, you could potentially reduce prices, you're going to be raising them again soon, I'll put it that way, but you couldn't necessarily say, hey, this school I'm going to let eat for free and this one not, based on the USDA won't let you do that. They're going to say, hey, you're discriminating against one school for charging them. So they typically, when those rates are sent in, they're level across the board, right? And so what that spin down plan is meant for is to replace things like ovens, kitchen equipment and stuff. They want a capital, kind of one-time capital spin down plan. And so what they're used for is ovens. You may go in and replace sinks, serving lines and things like that are old. If you did start letting people eat for free, that would run out pretty quick, and you'd have to raise them again probably mid-year, I think that's probably the layman's term. I don't want to speak for Dr. Sullivan, but
If not before.
but that's the issue with setting them for different schools. You'd kind of, if you let everybody eat for free, then you couldn't submit the USDA reimbursement, which would cut out the revenue, is what I'm getting at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Mr. Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What line item is actually food? I'm looking at 421 food preparation supplies. Is that actually food?
Beer and expenditures.
It's going to be your food supply, the 422 line item.
All right, 422. What other supplies? Is that just other supplies, not food?
You're talking about the food preparation supplies?
Well, food preparation supplies, no, sir. Well, food preparation supplies does not include any food.
Yeah, it's just your supplies like what you're using to prep the food with.
Okay, and 422 is the actual.
Is the actual food itself.
Okay, on 469 commodities.
So what that is USDA commodities. That's basically an in and out, so it has the same amount of revenue as expenditure. It's budgeted that way, and that number is actually given to us at the end of the year, and we book it as a revenue and an expenditure in those line items.
But is it?
It's where they give us free stuff we don't pay for, but we have to recognize that somebody gave it to us. So the USDA may give us some type of commodity, let's say apples, for example. They don't bill us for it. And then at the end of the year, the state gives us a revenue and expense number we book artificially. We don't actually have any money that comes in and out for those USDA commodities. Yes.
Yep.
Are there any other line items that's just food? I don't think I see anything, but just want to be sure.
Usually in your 422 is mainly your main food. And then, of course, like as Michael said, the 469 USDA commodities would be food potentially, but it's not anything that we pay for as the district.
Okay, and then the commodities could be, like you said, apples, fresh fruits and vegetables,
Correct.
cheese or something.
Correct. And that number varies every year. It's not the same.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gooch.
Question.
Ms. Oliver.
What is transportation other than students?
Right, so we do not have kitchens at all of our schools. And so we have some of our schools that, like Campus School, for example. McFadden has the food for Campus School, and Troy may have to help me. Campus School, Daniel McKee, Holloway? Those three. So we have to pay to transport the food. We have our own vans, we pay to transport the food. Smyrna West, is that correct, with David Urey? That's a test right there. So not every school has a kitchen.
And they're not required to have a kitchen? These schools aren't?
As long as we're providing the hot meals and we have our own warmers and move them over. Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you, committees, for those questions. Having heard the proposal and had a round of questions, I will entertain a motion at Health and Ed for Fund 143.
I move to approve Fund 143 as presented.
The second was Mr. McMurray, I believe. Is that correct? Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
I did have one more question, please.
Yes.
When you say that the fund is self-sustaining, correct?
Correct.
So that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to zero out, I guess is my question, because you said it's self-sustaining, but then you have a deficit, so I'm just
We have
kind
a
of challenged.
deficit. We have a deficit on purpose.
Okay.
So we have a deficit to spend down that fund balance.
Gotcha.
We could budget it general at a zero balance if it wasn't for that plan.
Okay, thanks.
And to address that, we have budgeted it at 4.4 million or 4 million roughly the last 2 years, and it wasn't getting the deficit down. So that's why we increased it.
Having heard questions, will, if no further, call the roll, please, to Health and Ed.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray? Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
At this time, I'm going to ask the Budget Finance Committee if you have any questions, comments. If not, I would prefer that we vote on this tonight. I'm seeing no one objecting to that. Having said that, not hearing any comments, I'll entertain a motion for the cafeteria fund.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion to approve the cafeteria fund. And second, Commissioner Sereno. Any further discussion on the school's cafeteria fund 143?
Mr. Chairman, I got a question.
You're recognized.
All right, line item 422, food supplies. As of April, we spent $10,460,000. You budgeted $4 million. You're coming down to $13 million. How much is it going to cost for the school for the entire month of May?
We go ahead and do our POs up front so that we can go ahead and have all of those things before the school year ends. So you're going to see those type of lines. We go ahead and do it in April so that you don't go over in May. So great question, but we won't go over those. That's a great question. We do a lot of those type of things, especially with food and food supplies. We go ahead and order them a month ahead because by the time our trucks and everything get here, the school year would be over.
So you anticipate a $1 million decrease from last year's?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions from the committee? You recognize, Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It looks like the projected fund balance is $11.3 million. How many months is that? You mentioned that you're not allowed to be over 6 months.
Be about 4.
Okay, and I noticed
That's
that.
6. That'd be 6. Yep.
Okay, and so we started out this past year with 18 million surplus and end up with 11.3. Has there ever been a time that we've had a surplus? I mean, don't we have to have a surplus it seems like every year there's a spend.
So actually, several years ago, 141 actually had to give, this was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, 141 actually had to give money to 143 to make payroll and cash flow it. But keep in mind, that assumes the 18 million that you're seeing is at the start, if you're talking about the 18,007,000.
Yes.
So that just assumes they're going to end in the deficit, which they won't this year. And so technically, they just have to have a spend down plan. If they just budgeted their operating, they probably would have a surplus this year. But they're going to end higher than that 11.3. They're not actually going to end there. That's where we have to budget them until we close the end of the year out. But
Okay.
but several years ago, they did need money moved from 141 to cash flow that fund. I believe it was back during COVID.
Yeah.
So we do need to keep some money in there. Otherwise, you'll have to come to 141. If 141 doesn't have it, then they're coming over here to the county general fund.
And I believe that 3 million's still in there that helped build that back up.
So if everything is equal, if we do end up with, say, $11 million, which is 6 months, starting the next year, then we're not looking at a spend down.
Yeah, in the USDA, you just have to have a plan. They just want to see that you're looking at your capital, your long-term plan. That's the goal of that. It's not necessarily to get you to a certain penny dollar. They want to see that you're looking out 2 to 5 years in advance and have some sort of strategic vision.
Any other questions from the Budget Committee on the 143 cafeteria fund? Hearing none, call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy? Commissioner Sereno? Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Chairman P. Dr. Sullivan, next on the agenda is Fund 177 Capital, Education Capital Projects Fund, tab 14.
All right, let's move on to 177. All right, so moving into Fund 177, and this revenue is again set by county finance, and so this is something we work with our county finance office and Michael and his office very well to kind of look through and talk through needs. And so in looking at this, let me get to where I need to be real quick. This has a estimated revenue and expenditures of $19,344,516. There are a couple things I wanted to highlight here as we are looking at 177. So a couple things with Fund 177 that I think is good for all of us to be reminded of where we've been is that going back several years ago, we moved several pennies into 177 to be able to address some of our capital projects. We have made progress there, but just like with the county's capital projects, the cost of labor and the cost of supplies has definitely increased. And so as we make progress, we're kind of like at a status quo. So we've made progress and that list just kind of stays where it is. And we'll get to that list in just a little while. The other parts I want to talk about is that it is a continued area that we focus and have an emphasis on. Last year, we did move an additional, I believe, 1.4 pennies into, yep, I believe that's correct. We moved 1.4 pennies from 141 into 177, and it connects back to what we're going to talk about with maintenance of effort in just a little while. We knew in talking with this committee and the full commission that we were going to need additional local revenue to open the new elementary school. So we moved, or this commission approved the movement of 1.4 pennies from 141 into 177. That moved us to 11.4 in this Fund 177, which somewhat offsets what we're going to look at with maintenance of effort in 141. So I know that's a connection that I just wanted to highlight because I'm sure we'll have some discussion over why is it so essential for the county school system to have an increase in maintenance of effort. This was something we looked at last year in moving funds from 141 into 177 was to offset some of that growth. We do have our project list. This is just an estimation of projects. We can just estimate projects because we do not know what revenue is going to be provided. We are extremely thankful for the revenue that we receive. And just like county general projects, it is never enough because that list just ever grows with the cost of HVAC exceptionally. The big things we have been working on are HVAC, paving, and really for us this last year is LED. And so we will have all of our LED projects finished at our high school athletic fields by the end of the summer. And then we will start into a 3 to 4 year transitioned into all of our in-school lights. We have received almost $500,000 already in TVA grants by putting those in, and that helped us be able to reduce our deficit this year. And so the LED project, without even looking at electricity savings yet, is starting to generate funding that we're able to do to offset our deficit. And so we're excited about that project, and we're also, for commissioners who have been here, we talked about going to bond and taking a bond out to get funding for it. We talked about going and doing a lease, talked about all different kinds of things, and instead we're using a portion of 177 each year to be able to start doing that ourselves. And it's about a 5-year project, and we've done 1 year. The other part about 177, we present this, but again, it's just an estimate. We follow all of the procurement and bid process that are required, and so just because you see it on here doesn't mean that that is a guarantee that that is what is going to happen, because different priorities may change over the next year. And so big examples being if we have a chiller or an HVAC system that goes completely out, we very well may have to go and take care of that chiller or HVAC system to where we were hoping to take care of, I'm just throwing 2 schools completely out. We wanted to take care of Smyrna Primary, but Wilson Elementary completely goes down. Those are things that we have to go and look to see. We have different priorities, and then something goes down, we have to go address. But again, we are making progress on where we were 3 years ago. It's just slow, incremental progress, just like everyone else in government is. And so that's just a little bit of kind of where we are on 177. A couple other questions I know that have been brought up at budget over the last couple months is we had questions about projects from previous years, specifically around Oakland High School, Riverdale High School, Smyrna High School, and HVAC. And it was around what happened to funding from previous years that was roughly around $40 million. I want to just state unequivocally that there was no money that was actually lost. The numbers that are on this spreadsheet is hypothetical funding, that this is what we need to take care of all projects today in year 1. We all know that there's no way the county commission can grant $160 million today to take care of all the lists that are on this project. So the things that are highlighted on here, the ones that we're saying are the biggest need right now. So those are the ones that we will address. It's on the very back page, sorry, the 177 it should be. The list, you guys should have in a different tab, I believe. You guys have a different tab that has the 177 project list?
I don't know that that's in their tab. I can make copies if I need to.
It's critical.
Yes, it
Does
is.
budget
I
have,
agree completely.
you're on budget, aren't you? Does budget,
When we made the books, I don't think we had that.
We don't have it in, not in my copy anyway.
I think, is a critical component of tonight's conversation. Can we get that?
Yep.
No, no one has it.
Very true. I do not, no.
I don't know if Cody would want us to.
Probably not. Yep. Yep. He's going to go print them real quick, and then
We're bringing copies.
Please use your microphone.
I got other stuff that we can keep talking about too. So he's going to go print the 177 list. You all are used to seeing the 177 list, and you'll have a copy for you in just a second that shows the highlighted list of here's what we believe are the priorities as of right now. The largest majority of them are going to be HVAC projects, LED, and then I believe, Trey, is there a playground on there again this year? Are we back to playgrounds again? Yeah, we're back to a playground again. We are very specific on Fund 177. Fund 177 does not involve shared pennies, and so we cannot do painting and general maintenance out of Fund 177. And so it's conversations we have with our principals nonstop about I know that there are things you may want to have to improve your campus, but if it's not a capital project, we cannot do it out of Fund 177. And so those are things that we are constantly looking at. But I did, once you get the sheet here in just a minute, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Just because it shows a number in a specific project does not mean that project is funded for this year. The only ones that we are saying is a priority right now are the ones that are highlighted. If it is not highlighted, it's going to roll to the next year, and it'll need to be funded the next year. Most of them are not funded the next year. It rolls to the next one, and it just continues to build, and we try to take our big projects and break them apart over multiple years. So that's kind of our just general Fund 177 of where we are. Happy to answer general questions while we're getting that sheet here.
While we're waiting, I do have a question. What is trustees commission?
My favorite one.
It is a commission collected by the trustee's office downstairs on revenue that flows through their office. Every fund has one, including the county general fund. What that does is that funds the operation of the trustee's office. It is a different percentage based on which revenue it's collected. So sometimes it's 1%, sometimes it's 2%, and then certain revenues they can't collect a commission. That's set by state law, not by the trustee's office. So he just follows state law there. Any money that's not spent on his office for salaries goes back into the county general fund.
So you're saying that's how the trustee's office runs, based on
That
these
is correct.
funds
So,
that come out of each budget has a percentage? That's what you're saying?
So think about sales tax. When we pay sales tax in, let's say we go down to the gas station and we buy a Coke, we pay 9.75%. That money gets sent to the state by that vendor. Once it goes to the state, the state takes off their 6%, whatever the state's portion is, but they also take a percentage of our local portion as a commission for processing that. Once they then do that, they send it 2 months later. The person has a month to turn it over to the state has a month to turn it over to us. Once they turn it over to us, the trustee takes out his 1% or whatever it is to run that office, to process it. Anything he doesn't use to run his office strictly as part of his budget, any excess goes back to the county general fund. I believe there was close to $8 million put in the general fund from excess trustees commissions last year. But it's required by state statute, and they set those percentages.
So for an example, on the expense side, we're paying the trustee $450,000, but it looks like we're going to get back about $63,000. Out of the
Commissioner, did you need an answer, Trey? Was that Mr. Harris?
Yeah, Michael, on school facilities tax, that's a pretty conservative number. That number should be higher. So my question is, on this additional revenue that comes in, will that money stay in 177, or does the schools have the opportunity to spread that?
So right now, is it there? It'll go to the schools. So anything they get, any actual will go there. Right now, the way that's passed, 50% goes to 177, another 50% goes to 151. So there would have to be a motion to change that, but they would get extra. As of today, I believe in the book, we've got a little over 2 million as of today. I believe the book has through April, but we've collected a little bit in May. So it is conservative, but yes, any extra over the 1.5, they would get and go on 177.
So that number's going to fluctuate because it's back-end loaded on collecting, correct?
Yes.
So it could be a lot higher, it could be lower.
It definitely could.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing is, I'll add, we can address that two ways. One, we can address that this year going in, or two, since this will be the first year, we had a lot of people pause on paying, and they went ahead and paid up front on the old structure. And so you could address it this year, or you could wait next year and see how it comes in and address it then and move it around. I mean, this body has ultimate flexibility on where that goes, really, as far as how this body wants to allocate that.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask?
Commissioner Harris, we did hear in Public Works that we've sort of caught up with that coming in arrears. It's kind of leveled itself. Does that make sense? So,
Yeah, it's going to be in arrears.
But Chairman, what he's talking about though is we did have that one big pause, but now nobody pays on the front end, now they pay on the complete back end. So we have caught up to where it's now trickling back in like normal, but I still think it'll be probably next year before we see that full effect.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Yes, Commissioner Urban.
Okay, just kind of general questions. So thank you for clarifying that this is basically just a list. Does that mean the calendar, what am I missing? Why do we have years up on top in the header?
That is for our purposes, that is what we are projecting so that we have a 5-year plan. We have a 5-year building plan. This is for us of what we're saying that our projects, that if everything is funded right now, this is what we need for our own planning purposes.
Okay, and then the kind of the following question is this intended to be more emergency or just whatever hits the priority list, or how is it? I'm trying to get a sense for, are there any kind of studies that would support this, and this one's a higher priority than the other? Because I completely understand things like, ADA and security and roofing. I'm a little less clear on, things like football expansion and track and playground and things along those lines. How are those items? How are they included in the not to say that they're not, shouldn't be, but I'm just saying, I get the emergency ones that you got to fund. I'm not as clear on the other stuff that doesn't quite seem to be as, how do you prioritize it?
Yeah, it goes with a replacement cycle for us of how, so our tracks are the big one. So that we have a replacement cycle for when we resurface our tracks, because we are looking at a safety concern for our students at that point so that they can still compete, or then we would have to move them off. And with our 9 high school tracks. Do we have 9, Trey? Is that correct? Our 9 high school tracks providing the same opportunity for each students at each one of those. Playgrounds, we have 2 playgrounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it 2 playgrounds at each elementary school? And so we have a replacement schedule for them so that we have 2 at each school. Some schools may have more than 2, and their PTO provides that if they have more than 2. Once a school gets to over 1,200, we sometimes, we've had 2 of those where we look to add a third, but we have a cycle for a replacement. So there's a structure for how we're replacing playgrounds. I mean, I know that may seem crazy to look at for HVACs, but if it was provided with the school and we built the school, then we're maintaining that instead of letting like the track or the playground get into disrepair, because that can happen very quickly if we're not maintaining them. And that's the part of the priorities truly goes with, we have HVAC is the easy one. We have HVAC techs and we have testing on our HVAC systems, and the age of our systems truly goes through which ones are in the worst shape of the worst and trying to maintain them as long as possible to keep them working. So HVAC is where you see the biggest one, and we've been able to tackle some of that, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be. And that's really, Trey started doing this, how many years ago has it been now? 5 years ago, so that the commission would have an idea and a plan of what we are looking at so that nobody was ever caught off guard of why your facility is in the shape they're in. We're all aware that this is where we are, and we're trying to fund them the best that we possibly can, and everyone's working together to do it. Knowing that the county's facilities have the same type of issues. It's not just unique to the school system. And the question...
Similar on gym floors, and they run, you cycle?
Cycle through them, yes. Yep. Every 2 years for a wax for a screen, but only doing all the way down to the floor every 25. Yep, every 25 all the way down. So we have systems for that. The part about revenue, Commissioner Harris, I believe if it goes above that amount, we would have to come back and ask to take it out of fund balance. It would require a Board of Education amendment and then a full health and ed budget, full commission once that extra revenue that's not on here goes for us to do a project out of fund balance, though. So that extra funding would require commission approval.
Quick question. On your HVAC priorities,
Yes.
was not the Oakland Annex HVAC included in the funding for it?
It was not, and that was something that Commissioner Irvin brought up on the floor for those, and something we've talked about extensively. He brought that up in March, April, or May of 2023, whenever we discussed that, for HVAC for Oakland and Riverdale and Smyrna, doing go ahead and include all of these projects. Didn't have a whole lot of discussion around it because we were trying to hit, I think the commission was trying to hit an overall dollar figure, so it was not included in that.
So it's built, but there's no HVAC?
No, these are the current annex, because we already have a current annex.
Oh, the
This
current
is
one, not
yeah,
the new one?
Not the new one.
That's what I was getting
Yes,
some clarity
yep.
on. Thank you.
Yep. Great question.
And those annexes were built,
90, yeah.
go.
Yeah, 2008 for the last part, yeah. And you'll see where it says approved, this is just where we're saying it's approved. Like, this is where, so principals can see this list. This is what they've all talked about, and we're saying this is all we can afford to fund this year. So Laverne High is a good example. They need a $5 million HVAC. We're going to do about 500,000 of it so we can start piecing together that entire one, and we do that across the board. OHS Annex, $3 million, it's $1 million. We need at RHS 3 and 500,000. So we're piecing together based on what type of shape they're in.
Resulting in a $19 million estimate for line
Yes.
item.
And if there's fluctuations to 177, what we'll do is it'll come off of these projects. So that way people can see, like, it truly comes off one of these that's there.
Another question, Mr. Chairman.
Ma'am.
And you're still anticipating these purchases of portables?
Movement of portables. So we have to move them to new sites, and I am happy
That's
to.
30 at 56,500, I guess, each? Is that what you're saying there? Or is that, I'm just looking at a line item, it says portables 30 at 6,500. Is that new portables, or is that HVAC for portables? What, I was just trying to get some clarity on that.
Trying to find where it is.
At the bottom of HVAC, in the middle of page 1.
Yeah, yes, that is your HVAC for your portables.
That's HVAC?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I am happy to report, thanks to this commission's support and the board's vision and our staff, we will be able to get rid of portables, some of them for the first time, and I don't know if that's happened, but we will be removing some portables. Some we will be moving, but some I'm not sure will be in the shape to move when we start to move them. And so I don't know if we'll have a bonfire or what at that point, but we are excited that when we can give you a list of portables that we're able to actually get rid of. That's a big celebration, because I know some of you have been on the commission for a long time and never been able to see that number reduce.
I'll address health and ed. We've heard 19 million some odd dollars for Fund 177. Had some discussion. I'll entertain a motion for or against or revise.
Just to clarify, you said it'll be portable movement as opposed to portable replacement?
That's just the HVAC portion.
I'm talking about right here on this second page.
Trey's coming up here.
It's hard for me to see, too. It's tiny, tiny.
Oh, this is roofing. This is roofing. 20 at $10,000. Yeah, that's roofing at our portables.
Okay,
That's just portable.
it's so
Yep.
tiny.
And none
All
of
right,
those.
thank you.
Yep, and that's not approved, so it's not going to be funded this year.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
So I will entertain a motion.
Here, I'll move to approve Fund 177 as presented.
Thank you. And a second by Mr. McMurray. Any further discussion?
Question, is the motion for the 19.3 or the 19.9? Is it we're looking at the budget that the mayor recommended? Is that what it is?
It's the 19.34.
344516, thank you.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray?
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
At this time, I'm going to ask the Budget Committee if you would like to address this tonight, or will we move it to the 29th? Let me see a show of hands of budget people that would prefer to move this to the 29th. I see one, and I assume that the rest of you would just as soon address it tonight. Therefore, I'm opening it up to discussion on 141. Excuse me, 177, the capital project.
I'll say that if the one member can answer questions and feel comfortable about it, tonight we can do it tonight. If not, if he needs more time, I would suggest that out of courtesy, we wait until the 29th.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Irving, you're the gentleman that raised your hand. Are there specific questions you'd like to look at tonight, or you just need more time to go over this? I know some of this is new information to us.
Yeah, some of it which I just received, for example, Friday, and so I would like additional time. I may or may not have additional questions, but until I actually go through and do the analysis, it's kind of hard to say.
I've heard from our vice chairman that he would allow this to go to the 29th. Do I hear a motion to move this 177 to the 29th?
So moved.
I have a motion to move it to the 29th. Do I hear a second? Chanto seconded. So I have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner Piercy? Yes. Commissioner Sereno? Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris? Yes. Commissioner Irvin? Yes. Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner P?
Yes. So we'll address 177 fund on the 29th.
I think it's what we've done the last 3 years as well. Is it expectation to do the same presentation or just to address questions? What would you guys like?
No, I would not anticipate having to do the same presentation. Thank
Just
you.
want to make sure. Yep.
Yeah, he had to step out for a moment. If you would continue with 141.
All right, let's roll through to 141. So 141 first, I know that overall this part probably doesn't necessarily matter to the commission, but I believe in transparency, so it's something I think is important. Anytime that your budget number just keeps getting larger, I like to address it. And so this budget number, if you look at it from the last 3 years, yes, it's increasing because we're a growing district. TISA has also increased funding, but there are 2 state grants very similar to grants that the county commission receives or the county government receives that makes your budget look like it is getting much larger than it truly is. You will see as we talk the Education Freedom Act that the governor passed last year that has a $2,000 bonus for each teacher that taught for us this year is included in this. So that's over a $9.3 million increase in revenue and expenditures that is a one-time bonus that makes your budget almost go up 1.8% because of just one increase. The second one is still Innovative Schools Model Grant that started last year, actually 2 years ago at this point. That was over $17 million that we received. And so those 2 together are over $25 million that is running through our county school system, but does not have necessarily a reoccurring cost to it once the grant is used or is funded by local tax base, so that number will start to lessen. But when you look at that number and you go how to go from 518 to 581 in just a couple years, you've got 25 million of it that is increased due to state grants, which we are glad to have that increased funding. But when that number starts to go large, it's something I always think is good to bring up. That's just me going over it. That's just me talking. Just when you go and you look like 4 years back and you go, how'd you go from 518 to 581? What happened?
Quick question. Is
Yes.
that a one-time?
It is. It's a one-time.
Okay, it's one-time bonus for the teachers, basically. It's not something that's going to keep recurring, so we
Not
want
as
to
of
pick
right
it.
now, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it would be the governor's allocation in his budget, yes. And I'll go over a little
Thank
bit
you.
more of that in just a minute, too. Yes. All right, so let's talk about Fund 141, and then we'll get really into the specifics with Fund 141. So I'll just talk in generalities first. Overall revenue is $573,385,825, and then it has expenditures of $581,343,045. It is a deficit of $7,957,222. I do want to compare that a little bit to where we were last year. I'm trying to find where I was. And so this is just the last two lines, because anytime you see a deficit, I think it's good to just compare. Last year, the county school system was an $11.3 million deficit due to charter school upfront funding. This year, we're at a $7.9 million deficit, and similar type situations of funding, but also for other budgetary requirements. So the deficit is less than it was last year. So I do think that is something that we always want to try to highlight as we're working to try to always utilize revenue as best as possible.
What was the deficit the year before?
Zero.
Do you remember?
Zero.
What deficit did you inherit your first?
28 million 3 years ago, then zero, then 11.3, then 7.9. So an 11 point, it would have been zero last year if not for upfront projected enrollment cost. And so we've talked about this year for 3 years being the year that, with this body, this was the year that we knew with opening a new school would be the year that we wouldn't be able to maintain that. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that a little bit. And so now we'll move a little bit further into 141. So the biggest part of our budget, and I'm going to hit staffing first because staffing is the biggest part of our budget, is around our staff. And so with staffing, I think it's important to talk about growth positions. And so growth positions, we fund with reoccurring funds. We don't fund growth positions with what we had with ESSER funds as much as possible. And if we do, we have to roll those in and take that into account. Even though BEP does not exist, that is still the basis for how we grant positions. We in our central office really have a separation of powers for granting positions. And it keeps us to make sure we are very conservative and responsible with our positions. Our chief academic officer, Dr. Chastain, is the one that grants positions. Dr. Anthony and HR post the positions, and then I have to sign off on the positions. And so without the three of us, a new position or a transferred position cannot be granted. And I know that may seem crazy for a district our size, but that is how we track positions down to the individual person's name. And for a district over 6,400 employees strong, we truly track each individual. As I mentioned in opening Poplar Hill Elementary School, we transferred teachers from Stewart's Creek Elementary School, from Browns Chapel Elementary School. With our rezoning for the high schools, we transferred teachers all over the place instead of granting new growth positions. And you're going to see that here when we go over our growth positions in a little while. And it takes, again, all three of us to sign off on that to be able to approve. I think that's just a good separation. Our example, so in K6, really it's in K3. We go to 1 to 20 is how we fund a position and when we grant a position. In 3 through 6, it goes to 1 to 25. 7 to 8, we go to 1 to 30, but this is just kind of an example. And then 9 to 12, we go to 1 to 22.7 because you have to include CTE a little bit more. 7 to 8, I have 1 to 25 because CTE has to stay 1 to 25 in some of your courses. You have some waivers, you can go 1 to 30. I have the smallest example on there though because some do still have to stay at 25. But your state requirement for 7th through 9th grade or 7th and 8th grade is still 1 to 30. And our schools roll right up into that limit and we don't give you another position until you get to that, which can be very frustrating for some of our principals, and I understand that. But that is each teaching position you're looking at when you're looking at salaries, benefits, you're in 70, 75,000 with benefits. And so each position is something we look at constantly. The next part we kind of wanted to highlight is what we look to do with our staffing this year. And it's important to highlight back to how we are looking at our increases. We are under the deadline for next year. We have to be at the beginning teacher salary of $50,000. We are in good shape, but we're not as in good a shape as our neighbors. Most of our neighbors are already at $50,000 for their beginning teacher salary, but we're pretty close, and we will get even closer this year. And so you will see it started in May 2023. You have to have a $50,000 minimum salary. We have talked about this for the last 3 years. It's what we've been trying to get to. This year, we have a 2.5% COLA increase, so we'll get to $49,564.81. Part of TISA funding has a required aspect that has to be allocated to teacher salary increases, and I think that's very good for everyone to know. And so we get questions about, what are you doing with your TISA funding? Last year, for example, $6 million of our additional TISA funding was set out from the Commissioner of Education that said has to go to teacher salary increases to be able to generate towards, to get to that 50,000 number. Then the classified staff, the 2.5% COLA increase for classified staff as well. They will go from $16.57 to $16.99 for the lowest salary grade level for employees, and that's your custodians. And that does include a 1.6% step every single year. And so if somebody is at an R101 and they go to R102, there is a 1.6% increase every single year. That is kind of how our salary schedule works, and we set that in place a couple years ago. So that's where our expenditures with staffing. The next thing I want to talk about, and you will have a copy of this, is our growth positions. And our growth positions for opening a school are minimal. And there's a couple places you don't have anywhere to transfer from. So you'll see PH3, that is an accounting code. This is Poplar Hill. And you have 4 regular instruction teachers. That is a music teacher, an art teacher, and 2 PE teachers. And those are our growth positions. We have 2 instructional coaches at each school, an academic interventionist at each school, a behavior interventionist. We then have our vacant positions out beside it, special education EA, and the different account codes beside it. School nurse is an area that we are probably with our first amendment, and actually probably in July with our school board going to have to add more positions for. That is an unfunded kind of mandate that we have from the State Department, is to hit a certain target with school nurses, and we are under that. They passed it last year once our budget was already finished. We need to add between 3 and 6 additional nursing positions. Again, we'll do this through an amendment, and the way we will get the funding for this is we have done exceptionally well with some of our testing, and we were going to be able to freeze. And when I say freeze, it's freeze for a good reason, not because we're in a budgetary issue. We're going to be able to freeze hiring some of our teachers in English as a second language, because we've exited students who have tested English language proficient. Not for any reason other than it's not because students are, let me clarify this. It's not because students are moving out, not because students aren't supposed to be here. I had no clue of that. It's because we have done very well preliminarily on our results of the number of students who have shown English language proficiency. And if you have you have to have 1 teacher per 35 students. Yes, and so we have quite a few teaching positions over the next couple years in ESL, if we continue to perform well, that we'll be able to move into the next middle school as well. So there's some good news there, but you'll see that over the next, in our board, you guys are sitting here, we'll have to make some modifications for nursing positions as we kind of move forward with some of that funding. But we have 3 school nurse positions, 2 school counselors, social worker, a speech pathologist, a media specialist for the new school, 9 library EAs. The big request from our high school media specialist was to have an EA to help with laptops. And so we have our media specialist librarians at the high schools. They have 2 media specialists. Our middle schools have 1 media specialist and an educational assistant. Our high schools have requested an educational assistant because they're charged with the inventory of every one of our computers and the libraries. And so this was the highlighted position that we highlighted as a need for our district, especially with what all we've done with technology. You have a science social studies specialist. This is a central office position that currently exists. It is in federal right now. It is the one position we have still in federal. There have been discussions about having federal funds cut in this line that she's in. Instead of having to worry about that, we went ahead and put it in 141 as a very valuable aspect of our team, and I wanted to make sure that we weren't sitting here in October having to come back and amend a position in. The next ones are a little bit weird. You see a half, records clerk is for our legal department, but then you'll see a principal, a half, a bookkeeper, a full one, an assistant principal, 0.25, a secretary, a 0.5. That is for our next new school, so Poplar Hill Middle School. That school will not open until August of 26, but we go ahead and start that principal's position in February of 26, so they can start hiring their staff. Secretary and the principal start in February. The assistant principal starts in May. And so that's why those positions are not full-time positions. You've got your attendant secretary, an accounting tech, a part-time admin assistant, custodians, a sped bus aide, transportation admin assistant, and then voluntary pre-K. It's 38.25. And if you go back and look at where we have been over the last couple years, that number is decreasing year over year over year for growth positions because we are trying to transfer positions that we have instead of adding positions. And that's kind of where we are growth position-wise. Next, I wanted to go over year changes. It's something that Commissioner Phillips, we always talk about. So these are just our big accounts, and then we can go individually if there's some that we want to look at. But there are some big accounts codes that I wanted to talk about. And these are, we're going to look at our account codes. First, we're going to look at regular instruction 71-100. And I'm just looking at the page that shows the fiscal year amount 25, $278 million, and then fiscal year 26 amount $297 million, shows a $19 million difference, and then 6.9%. And if you look at this initially, you're like, this isn't sustainable, and I would agree completely. But this has the $9.3 million for stipends that I talked about earlier. So this has the $2,000 teacher bonus that was part of the Governor's Education Freedom Account or Savings Account. That is a one-time bonus for teachers that is included in this. And then it has your 2.5% raise included as part of the regular instruction line. The other part of that difference, again, I mentioned last year when we got it from the Commissioner of Education, over $6 million had to go to teacher line increases for salary. That is where this goes to. The part that I'm worried about is not sustainable is not your teacher salary line items. It's the part that we have cut for our deficit to lower the deficit. We don't have funding in here for textbooks. We don't have funding in here for computers. 2-3 years down the road, we're going to come to this again to where we're going to have a healthy fund balance, or we're going to have to increase maintenance of effort to be able to fund textbooks and computers. And so this last year, we were able to do that at a fund balance. In a couple years, we're going to have a social studies adoption, and it's going to be time for new high school computers again. And so we've been able to do that at a fund balance. That's not necessarily going to be an option. So we're always looking at those, but it's something we're just always, we had our leadership meeting today, and we started talking about next year's budget already.
Dr. Sullivan, I think the mayor wanted to jump in on that 2 years from now.
Thank you for Dr. Sullivan for that. So you're telling us in 2 to 3 years we can expect you to come back and say, hey, we need laptops, we need textbooks, it's coming. Do you have a way of knowing what you know today about where we're going to be 2 or 3 years from now, quantifiably what that number might look like?
About $20 million for textbooks and computers, which is unbelievable to think that's how much textbooks cost.
$20 million for
textbooks and computers.
And computers.
Yep.
Thank you,
and
sir.
we should be able to knock that number down. Like any extra funding we get, we go towards computers, we go towards textbooks, but total, and this depends on, this says the State Department follows their guideline, but 20 million roughly for
But when you say knock that number down, give me an example.
Million here, 2 million here if we get
where
extra.
does that million here, 2 million there come from that you're able to knock that down? Typically, where would you find that?
Extra revenue that the state, we had a ESSER funding, then if the state gives you extra revenue funding in different places, that is what the last couple years, we have taken amendments to our school board and then to the commission to start addressing 3,000 computers here, 2,000 computers here to be able to knock that down as much as we can.
Thank you,
But
sir.
it's just being transparent of where we are. We have lowered it to be able to, the last couple of years, to get to it.
We did an amendment last month, Mayor, I think 6.9 million for science books that they pulled out of fund balance.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could ask briefly, other than textbooks and computers, is there anything else like that on the horizon that we could be anticipating now as opposed to, kind of a last minute?
Yeah.
And that could be any, and we could set a threshold, $3 or $4 million if you want to, but is there anything else out there that we could be anticipating now like that?
Just with us, the last couple years holding to maintenance of effort, we have been absorbing all of the increased electricity cost, any extra cost we've been absorbing while still growing. And so we're out of ability to be able to absorb extra costs. So all of our funding, and the commission has done an amazing job because y'all have funded our building program. We've been extremely aggressive in funding buildings, and that's what we needed. And as we continue to move forward, hopefully that will start to slow some. I've compiled a little bit of a 5-year plan to present to the board, just looking at the next steps, and it just initially looks pretty substantially less than what ours did a couple years ago. And so hopefully some of that funding will be able to shift into 141.
But could it be like, Mr. Irvin, could it be the new high school coming on board? Could be something that we don't have necessarily?
A new high school coming on board is...
Well, it would be great to have a little more solid at this point, 5-year, 4-year, 3-year, whatever, capital projects type thing. I was looking more at the personal property side, like a book, something along those lines, so that we're not surprised by a $6 million at the end of the year textbook request. Anything along those lines is what. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman.
And we've been discussing that one for, yes, and textbooks is all dependent on when the State Department of Education changes their cycle. So if they change their cycle, then we are at their whim of whenever they change their cycle to. Right now, it's supposed to be in 2 years. They could push it to 3 or 4 or whenever they want to, which is very frustrating.
But I know at Health and Ed, Mr. Irvin, we have been prepared for instance, textbooks and computers both. 2 years ago, two and a half years ago, we were anticipating the 6.9, whether it came from whatever source, because they acknowledged it on their budget 2 years ago, that they cut it. And so when we saw it in fund balance, they were able to pull it. So, but to Commissioner Irvin's point, are there any other, you have recurring textbooks on some yearly rotation that's somewhat arbitrary, but you can anticipate it. Computers you continue to use to do a rotation of sorts that you anticipate and have shared with Health and Ed. Are there any other items that are coming that are on a 3 or 4 year basis, and are they in your line of thinking out 3 or 4 years?
Potentially what our school board decides with, we have 2 charter schools, so projected enrollment for charter schools anytime they grow is something we look at. Next ones are anytime we open a new school. As you open a middle school and a high school, those costs are larger than opening an elementary school. And so those are your next big.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Irvin. Did I waylay you? Ms. Oliver.
Relative to textbooks, has there ever been any discussion about online or virtual textbooks, since you're getting laptops or computers anyway?
Same price. They're the same price. They include the digital with the textbook and charge you the exact same price. So Mr. Vaughn on the board brings that up every time, and it's astounding, the price, and it's all through the Tennessee Textbook Company is their name, and it's $150 or $160 a piece per kid, and we are statutorily required to have access for every kid, and when you're our size, it is a fortune.
Commissioner Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. Since we're having this conversation, we're talking about expenses that may come up on us next year. We're currently under contract, is that right, doing due diligence on the Lee Road property, is that right? So the purchase for that and the estimated price, is that something, where is that money going to be asked to come from? Because if we're talking about $6.9 million for textbooks, we may be looking at a land purchase we're going to be asked for in a few months. It's more than that. And that would be coming up, it's been, what, 2 months now?
About a month, yes.
So we're just 3 or 4 months away from actually, if it tests out correctly, purchasing that. So that is something you're planning on asking us for. So there's something coming that we're not talking about. Just make sure you knew that. And that probably is more than the textbooks.
Got that at the end to discuss, so
Okay.
exactly right.
We haven't talked about that very much, but it seems very relevant to our conversation right now.
And I think that there may be an appropriate, we definitely come back to that, but I don't know if we may be kind of off this table. Dr. Sullivan, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll keep going on the
the
table, yes.
opportunity
Yeah.
to drill into that?
Yep,
and
we'll go towards the end is when I plan to bring it up.
Okay. Thanks for bringing it up, Commissioner Wilson. We will come back to that.
You have a huge increase, it looks like, for 71-150 alternative instruction. It's $1 million increase, but this truly deals with coding. So we have opened Simon Springs Community School, and the EAs and teachers that were previously spread throughout the county at our behavior intervention classrooms were coded as special education teachers. They are now in alternative school, which is how Simon Springs is coded. And so those have to be reclassified into an alternative school setting. And so that is a coding change when you are moving from special education to alternative instruction. And so it truly has to do with how the school is coded and how the teachers have to be coded in moving those employees from one setting into the next. Special education instruction, you see, is a huge other portion of our budget. That again follows with our 2.5% increase and staffing. Attendance has a 5% increase. It is only $94,000 of an increase. We hope to be able to have a change in student information systems over the next year. We anticipated having a change from Skyward, which is our current vendor, to either stay with Skyward's new platform or go to a new vendor. The state changed their RFP and re-released their RFP, and so it got pushed back an additional year. And so this helps pay for finishing Skyward for this year and then the transition period for the next year for a new vendor. Health Services is looking at 3 additional nurse positions, and again, this will be one that we probably have to come back and amend. And then Contracted Services, we are requesting a lightning detection system. Murfreesboro Parks and Rec has it. It is, most of our counterparts have it. It's coming from our coordinated school health and our athletics department requesting this to be able to track athletics and lightning. So that if we have lightning like you see with colleges and professional, if you have lightning within 7 miles, everybody automatically knows you have to stop. I don't necessarily love a cost increase, and it is not $1 million whatsoever. But when you are, I think it's what, 100? You remember, is it 100,000? A little bit under. But when you have multiple facilities across the county and coaches and umpires making that call, I want to reduce the liability on us and say that, no, there was a lightning strike within 8 miles, you are stopping right now. That just decreases our liability and makes sure that we are doing exactly and having a data point. Other student support, you'll see additional growth positions for Poplar Hill, for school counselors and social workers. It says increase to SROs for school security. So we pay overtime for our SROs if they're doing school events. And we pay this out of our central office accounts down to the schools. We require them to have a certain number of SROs at our athletic events. We dictate that, and normally our schools have to pay for that out of their basketball, football, soccer accounts. But when we are dictating how many they have to have, we do give each school a $10,000 at our high schools and a smaller amount for middle schools that helps offset some of the cost. With some of your rivals, and we've had incidents not necessarily in our county, but in other counties and across the nation, or other states across the nation, to where you've had large incidents without the number of traffic control and police presence that you needed at athletic events. We just worked with our sheriff's department and said, how many do we need to have at each school? And so that's what we do, so we help cover the cost of that. Instructional support is a lot of our contracted stuff that we do with our central office and our employees at our central office. You'll see special education is a decrease because we moved 4 positions to federal. Going down, you see Board of Education. I want to spend some time here because if you look at this and go, what is the Board of Education doing for 66.8% increase? This is connected to the amendment you all approved earlier. So this is truly moving the money that we talked about earlier today in that first budget amendment where you had to move from one line to the next. This is that same exact thing of we are changing, and if you look at the very bottom of, trying to find that actual account, 99,100 at the bottom, you'll see in fiscal year 25, we budgeted 11 million. This was to charter schools. And then this year, we are removing that, and it shows a minus 100. 5 million of that went up into this account for charter school payments. This is just where the auditor wants it to be, but it makes it look like the Board of Education's line just blew up to pieces, and it did not. Office of Superintendent, we are adding a records clerk. We have a records, we have two general counsels. One general counsel deals with basically discipline and school requests all day. And then we have a special ed attorney, and then all school board items are handled by Mr. Reed, our school board attorney, but kind of our in-house. Our records person is the new person, would handle all of the open records requests that we get and all of our video requests that we get from buses, parents wanting to see video, discipline requests, we get to see videos, quite a bit of that. You'll see Office of the Principal. I had a comment earlier from someone who said, is the additional principal, the AP, and the secretary getting $1.9 million increase? No, they are not. This is the entire line is a $1.9 million increase, which includes all of your principals, your secretaries, your assistant principals, your bookkeepers. They are all with their 2.5% COLA increase and their 3 new positions with that. Fiscal Services and Human Resources, this was just a trade-off between these two. We moved benefits from Human Resources to underneath Mr. Runyon. And then operation of the plant and maintenance of the plant, we reduced that to be able to cut our budget. Transportation, you see, is a 22% increase. That is our bus contractor 17% increase plus $4,000 stipend, and then 1 additional transportation growth position. And then you kind of see down loan paid that we had 2 that fell off. And that gets us, if you'll see, flip over to the next page, this is just our revenue. You'll see a lot of our revenue that was changed. Whoop, I thought I had that, I don't have included that one on there. But you have the additional revenue sheet that shows the additional revenue coming from local option sales tax, and that 2.9 million is really essential to us over maintenance of effort for generating to open the new school. And it does offset what we talked about with needing that for really the last 2 years. We have decreased it. I want you all to know that we started with, Brian, how big was our deficit when we started? So it was over 17 million when we started cutting, and that was before the transportation portion of 6 point something increase. So it increased to about 23 or 24 million, and so we have gone through and tried to remove every little thing. We have removed a lot of vacant positions, so where we used to have, I hate to say, just areas that may have been inflated to show that, oh, maybe there's 20 extra teaching positions here. Those type of extra teaching positions aren't there. So we are truly as lean as you possibly can be in what is presented for you. So where we have been able to build fund balance, the only extra place to build fund balance is going to be if revenue comes in higher. It's not going to necessarily come from expenditures. When Michael and I were talking about, like, where do you feel safe? I said, I feel I'm at about a 0.3% of what I have that I don't expect to spend if you spend these lines. And at that big of a budget, you're still looking at a couple $1 million, but that 0.3 is a scary area to look at a $581 million budget. I mean, I know it may seem strange. Many of you all, of course, doing this together know me very well for the director of schools to present all of this. I trust Brian, but it is something that is important to me, and our staff knows this. I'm involved day to day with our budget because it's so big and I feel like it's essential. And so it's not my lack of confidence for Brian why I present it. I want you all to know this is how invested I am in day to day into our budget. And I'm happy to answer any questions around kind of where we are or anything about this.
Mr. Chairman?
This, on the account variances, is that where we'll, and then, but if you, okay. Mr. Irvin, please.
Thank you. What was the average daily membership for this past fiscal year?
You have ADM? Second. Talking about the funding level or how many kids?
Basically the
we have?
ADM for,
He's asking your ADM, I think you submit to the state.
Yeah, give me just a second.
yeah.
Number of kids, the actual number, yep. I'm pulling up the latest that was sent. $51,608.
And then how much growth was there this year compared to end of last year?
So last year, we ended the year, let me get you that real quick, tell you what we were funded on last year. And that 51,608 is an March preliminary number, or an April preliminary number, so it's still going to fluctuate a little bit.
Fair
But
enough.
it's where we are
Fair
roughly a month ago from the State Department. And then let me tell you what we got funded on last year. Second, it's easier. I have more internet service on this. 50,751.
50,751, okay.
And please explain for the public your
Yes,
acronyms.
so I'm looking at average daily membership, which is how many kids that we have enrolled. So last year was 50,751 was our final number, and then right now is 51,608.59. That number will still go up some because this is not including, we normally grow still in March, April, and May.
Okay, and that's fair. So what's your annual ADM growth projections for the next 3 years? Based on 3 years' growth and current changes, things like charter schools and vouchers coming online and
Yeah.
all of that. I'm trying to,
Yeah.
the kind of what I'm trying to get at is the projections as
Yep.
well as have you factored in these items that could decrease enrollment, have an impact on it, as part of your request for growth
Yeah.
this year and going forward?
I know there's been some conversation about vouchers impacting our school system. I don't anticipate that. I've talked with our local private schools, and so there has to be open seats, and there's not necessarily open seats right now at ours. So some of them are growing, but you still have to be able to have open seats, and that's not necessarily the availability. You will see on our 5-year plan, we are not going to be requesting necessarily a new elementary school in the next 5 years because that's where our charter schools are. Our growth at the high school this last year was over 3%, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of charter authorizers at the middle and high school level. There's not a lot of, it costs a lot of money to educate high school students, and so it's hard to replicate that. And so you'll see our model start to reflect that as well. Our growth, to project it out, part of it really depends on what we see this summer with English as a second language. I just don't know I think that's a fair question. I don't know. And that is also why we've started to really decrease some of ours. But I've also heard that argument of you're going to lose students because of the education savings account. You are still held true by the number of kids that you have. And we still grew even with charter school students this last year. I don't have any reason to believe that won't still happen these next couple years. As we are starting, we talked about this with Health and Ed and with our board, what we are seeing is a lower growth at the elementary level because of the cost of housing. And so we are noticing a larger increase of middle and high school students because it costs more. You also have a lower birth rate, and so there have been less babies born, and so we're having more kids move into the middle and high school level. And that's why you have your high school additions. Our 5-year plan is going to include high schools, and so that's where we're seeing the growth now, to where 5-10 years ago was the elementaries.
Did you
Good
use a number, something close to 52,000 for next year? Is that?
Yes, yeah, and we include pre-K as well, so the numbers I gave you were just kindergarten through 12th. When we're including pre-K, we're closer to 53,000. So about 52.7, 52.8.
That's this coming year.
Yes, yep. Because I gave you, we are funded strictly on our kindergarten through 12th grade students. We do receive federal funding and some other funding for pre-K students that we serve, and we serve about 900 to 1,000 pre-K students as well for special education in some other areas. So they're 3- and 4-year-olds and some 5-year-olds, but they are not included in funding from the state in that 51,600 number.
Okay, 52.8, and then you're going, any projections beyond that?
About 1.5 to where we've been doing 2, 3, about 1.5 unless something changes.
1,500, are you saying percentage?
I would hope 750 kids.
Okay.
Which is different than what we have been at. We have been between, just 3 years ago, we were at 2,200. Then we've roughly been 1,000 to 1,500 forever. And so I am hopeful at 750, and I hope I'm not wrong.
And I've seen it, Wayne, or Commissioner Irvin, we've probably used a 2.5% average or to 3 over the last 25 years, even before my time.
I hope I'm not
so
wrong.
So this 1.5 is lower than I've ever seen it.
I very well could be wrong, because that's the lowest that I know it of.
Mayor Carr, did you want to comment on this EDM topic?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to comment on this EDM topic?
Well, I wanted to follow, if I could, Mr. Chairman, with Commissioner Irvin's remark about what you're seeing as the growth trend, because I'm interested in what the budget looks like 2, 3, 4 years from now. And if I heard you right, you were saying that the growth for K through 3 is slowing down rather dramatically, and indeed kindergarten and maybe first grade, you're actually seeing negative enrollment year over year. Just recently, you attributed that, if I understood you correctly, to the demographics of people are not having kids, right?
To some degree, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
My question is, if that's the case, then in 6, 8, 10 years from now, these kindergartners and first graders are not going to require the same potentially resources that we may be feel like we need to build for now. Would that be true?
If it stays slow, so what we notice is our kindergarten has decreased 8 to 10 kids the last 5 years. And for a district our size, 8 to 10 is not a whole lot of kids. But we have gone from about 3,000 kids down to like 2,940, and it's just slowly declining. But by the time you get to 5th grade, you're back over 32 or 3,300 kids again. So we're picking kids up somewhere during that 1 through 5 level, but the number of kindergartners are dropping. And so it's unique.
But you also said, I'm trying to understand your remarks. I'm trying to graph this out in my mind. If 3 years ago the school population was growing 2,000 plus students a year, and we were in a significant challenge about where we're going to put these kids, but now you're projecting a total growth rate of about 750 kids. Is that correct?
Next year, yes.
Yeah. So do you see that trend line continuing to go in a southerly direction?
I will know more in October when I get our news. So we contract with RSP, who runs all of our numbers for us as well and gets all of it from the Census Bureau and all of our planning committees to get all of the information, and so they track it for us as well.
Perfect. Do they provide tools so that you can predict what the potential enrollment will be 5 and 10 years from now, based on that historical and national and regional data? Do they provide those numbers for you?
I can send you the report.
That'd be great. Thank you, Dr. Sullivan.
And I've seen that information show in the 5-year plan too, Mr. Mayor, that the school board will adjust their 5-year plan based on those enrollment numbers too. And Mr. Irvin, you were on the EDM topic and talking about the growth rate of 1.5. Did you finish that thought?
Oh, yes, I had another question. A couple more questions. I want to go to vocational education, and specifically 71,300, line 730. The actual is like a 1.5, and
Give me just a second to get there. 71,300.
yeah, vocation is 1.5 is the actual, and then if you go over the mayor board recommendations, 625, and I'm sure there's an explanation. I just wanted to understand why that's been cut, or maybe there's another explanation I'm just missing.
All right, I'm on 71,300. Which exact count are you in?
730, line 730.
Oh, vocational instruction equipment. Yeah, this is part of your Innovative Schools Model Grant, and so they have to be able to utilize all of their funds by September of '26 with an extension, and we're applying for some extensions, but that is why you see that amount. Originally in 2024 was 1.4, and then we amended the budget, the original budget, and so you're going to see that number start to decrease. But we may go back, and you have an amendment if there's still funds they decide to spend out of here, but it's part of that $17 million Innovative Schools model from the governor did in 2023.
And we will continue to be able to provide CTE equipment, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Okay, I
yes.
just want to make sure.
CTE is actually, and I know this seems crazy, but CTE is where we put a lot of focus because it generates a lot of money. And so we run that part like a business. We fund teachers in that to high areas that generate a lot of funding.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I have a question. The current bus contract is already in here.
Yes.
Okay. As of this date, how many bus contracts do you have executed? And
Started today, and so I can have an update for you on Thursday.
okay, yeah, because where I'm headed with it, what is there a drop dead date basically?
Yeah.
Where you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And then if you have to make whichever direction the decision goes, either to continue or not,
Yep.
then that has budgetary implications. And so we can talk about that on Thursday.
We can, and really the budgetary aspect would have to come from that transportation line. It would move from other contracted or contracts with private vehicle owners to move to other lines without. So I'm hoping that we'll have most, if not everybody, in line by Thursday night.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. I look forward to an update.
Yep.
Thank you.
I believe Chairman P. would like to ask a question as well.
And I hope I don't throw too much of a curveball. This is kind of a horse of a different color, but in your line item for growth positions, 72, 130, under counselors and also social workers, I wanted to ask some questions. Our schools are so large now, and this is directly where I'm headed with this. I push to get SROs in all our schools because I'm worried about the safety of our students. I think it's paramount. You cannot educate if you don't have a safe system. I've been doing some research and some reading on school shootings, and there's a man that's done interviewing, and he's interviewed all the live school shooters and asked them what could have prevented them from doing what they did. Could anybody have? And they said, 100% of them said, any one person could have stopped me by talking to me. And there's instances where people were stopped because somebody said, hey, let's go over here and eat lunch together. And most of the times, this guy that's I've been reading with, he said that almost always the students could tell you this person was a problem, and some of the teachers also could have, but there's a problem with communication and getting this information to where it should be to prevent this. And the reason I'm bringing up these two positions, I know your counselors, when I was in school, basically they were saying, hey, what vocation are you going to? Are you going to go to higher education? What's your plan? But I noticed the social workers that you've got there, and what I'm wondering is what kind of contact are we able to make with these large campuses with these few people, and how many, for instance, counselors at our major high schools, how many counselors and social workers do we have? Are they able to interview what percent of these kids, or do they have an open forum for the whole campus? Can you give me a little background on that? Because it's something that, I mean, we spend a lot of money on safety for our schools. I mean, if you look at Oakland and Riverdale, part of the reason we're doing that is for safety. And it's possible that we can help ourselves if we had more people that could intervene if there are problems. Hopefully I made myself.
Good, yeah. So these 2 school counselors are just for the new school. Our schools always ask for additional school counselors. Unfortunately, in this highly politicized environment, the school counselor and mental health aspect has sometimes taken a political front of you don't need to talk to students because that is not the school system standpoint, and fundamentally we would agree. That's not something we want to do, but ultimately if a kid doesn't come to school ready to learn and can't learn and is disrupting other kids, and we've got to do something if it's disrupting the safety. So that is a narrative that we've, as a school director, I don't necessarily like to battle, but it's something that we've had to battle, to say that if a kid comes to us in crisis, we still have to provide support with parental involvement, of course. So I know that's not kind of what you asked, but that just gives you some context that it is a highly politicized environment with.
Well, I'm certainly not advocating no.
Yes, no,
parent
I know you're
support.
not, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying that's something that we have to be aware of. The second aspect of that is we're in better shape than we were a couple years ago, but nowhere near. We added a additional school counselor at all of our comprehensive high schools 2 years ago. Our school board approved that, and then the county commissioner approved our budget. So all of our comprehensive high schools now have 5, and our middle schools have most of them. We've tried to get to them to 3, and our elementary schools, we've tried to get them to 2. Our ratio is still at the high school level close to 1 to 450 students. Yeah.
1 to 150.
1 to 450.
1 to 450.
Yeah. Nowhere near enough. At the middle school level, you're a little bit over 1 to 500 at most of them, unless they have a third. Your elementary can be, if it's a big school, your elementary schools can be even higher than that. So we try to keep them below 1 to 500 if at all possible. But it's just like everything else. It's definitely a challenge. But I agree with you.
So one person would have to see at least 2 a day just to get through the number of students that they're assigned.
And the ratio was 1 to about 600 2 years ago. So we're lowering it, but it's.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Any other questions regarding Fund 141 from either committee? Commissioner Oliver.
I have some questions. I noticed on several of the line items, we have things that are not itemized that just are listed as others. And they're pretty large line items, like other salaries and wages, other contracted services. I mean, Can you give us some information on what those are paying for?
It would depend on each one. So first it is.
Let's start at 71,150. That one has a list of other contracted services, for example. So what would that other entail?
71,150. So first, we have to go with whatever the account codes that are available from the State Department. So that is the account codes that are available from the State Department that we have to use. And so anything that is in one of those accounts qualifies for other charges, or there's nowhere else for it to go. So and you may have to pull up that access.
Let me just put through this right here and see.
Y'all need to pull up a spreadsheet. We've been 2 hours. I'm seeing a little fidgeting. Would anyone care to take a 2 or 3 minute recess? 5-minute recess? Chairman?
Okay, by me.
Just show of hands, 5-minute recess. I'm not seeing raise of hands. Carry on. Take your individual breaks if anybody needs to go. They're going to be a moment.
I don't have Wi-Fi access, so I'd have to pull up our individual accounts and chart of accounts, because this is requiring us to go into our accounting payroll and pull up individual requirements and accounts.
Jimmy, what account you need?
Okay, so 71200, 189, other salaries and wages, 400,552. I mean, other is not itemized. What does that cover? And it's proposed 411,000. I just noticed several things on here that are not, again, itemized. Private contracts, $2 million. Other contracted services, other salaries and wages, 1,950,000. So I'm just curious, if you lump things into other, what is that?
So for your contracted services, that could be anything from any vendor that we contract with for, let's just say, off the top of my head, instruction. That could be that the SIS system, the system that connects with the State Department. It could be Instructure, which is a benchmark assessment. It's any vendor that we have that we sign a contract with over a year or a multi-year contract. So it's not broken down because there is probably 100 or more vendors that could be involved in that process. So that's the reason why we don't break it down and tell you, oh, this vendor is $10,000, this vendor is $100,000, this vendor is $50,000. So that's what your other contracted services are. That's where we put pretty much any of our vendors. It used to be in a software line, but once, I guess Dr. Sullivan didn't like it when I did it, but because they are contracted services, we don't own the programs. We contract with them to use them. We ended up moving it from the software line into contracted services, but it would have been anything that was software related. A lot of it's software related, and then, you know, a lot of our security contracts and things like that are also in other contracted service.
Other salaries and wages?
So other salaries and wages could be anything that is not a teacher. It's not so if you look in 72,410, which is your principal line item, it will show you secretaries, bookkeepers. Sometimes bookkeepers could also be in a 189 line, the other salaries and wages, because that account does not have a bookkeeper for a line for it. So what we do is we go off the chart of accounts that the Comptroller's Office for the state of Tennessee gives us. So some of these line items are not available. So if you had a specific, let's just say again, let's go back to bookkeeper, and it's in a different account than our normal secretary or our principal line, we would have to end up putting it in other salaries and wages because the chart of accounts does not have a bookkeeper line, which is 119, I believe. They don't have that line item available in that specific account, so we have to enter it in 189. It looks like it's other salaries and wages, but it doesn't say it's an exact bookkeeper. But you may have multiple types of people like that in that line. That's the reason why we don't break it out.
Brian, we're not finished with this, but I think Michael he's able to pull up some line items,
Yes,
and I have a question.
Commissioner Oliver, you asked about 71,200, which is special education instruction.
That is one of them,
Yep.
yes, sir.
So just as an example, I'm going to run down through there real quick. So you got teachers. That's going to be your SPED teachers like normal. That's self-explanatory. Then you're going to have EAs, educational assistants. That's pretty self-explanatory. Speech pathologist. Your other salaries and wages are going to be people like central office special education staff. There's not a line for them, so they don't get to pick these. We get a list of chart of accounts from the state. So anything that doesn't fit in one of the descriptive line items as far as teachers, EAs, or speech pathologists, they're going to get lumped in other. And so in this case, it's I'd have to go look at the names, but it's probably some central office special education staff, or let's say somebody that just doesn't fit in a certain box. The other thing about contract services is, for example, to cut it to county general, you know they have Crimson Security downstairs that mans the security desk for the courthouse? They're in our other contracts and services line item. So it's just any line item, they'll tell us to put it there that doesn't have a descriptive. And so for them, it's pretty much going to be central office staff. It could be like every once in a while they'll have a position that maybe touches 4 or 5 schools. It could be that. But it's required that we use that if they don't fit in another box.
If I can add, does this item, others, services, et cetera, get scrutinized? Does the school board see the line item depth that Michael sees? I know that we don't often ask to get that deep into it, but is somebody accountable to observing?
Well, keep in mind, they're also audited to, when the auditors pull stuff, they're going to make sure they would give us a finding or put in the audit report if we didn't use, it's a state law that we use the chart of accounts correctly. And so just like they wanted us to move that charter school stuff at the budget amendment you approved tonight, they're going to look through there and say, hey, that doesn't belong there, you need to move it. Or if we say, no, we're not moving it, they're going to put it in the audit report and, tell everybody about it. So that's common. You're going to see it across county general as well, across our budgets. So
even under regular instruction, other salaries, I mean, we're looking at 4.5 million.
Yeah, and a lot of times that could be some type of, a lot of times that central office style staff or somebody that doesn't, because 7-1100, is that what you asked for, is teachers, or that's the teacher regular instruction category. And so a lot of times that's going to be some catch-all that doesn't have a descriptive, it could be like your athletic director at the central office. There's not a line item for athletic directors. I'm not saying he or she's in there. I'm saying that's an example of, I know there's not a, oh, he is in there? Oh, okay. I was close.
It would also be, for example, 71100 is an instructional account. It would be pretty much any staff that's under Dr. Chastain, which is
Well, this is 72,210.
which that's her account too.
Gotcha.
So it's her staff that's under her that works at the central office, the majority of those. Now, there are some in 105. If you look in 72,110, 105, that would be her salary by itself, and some other directors in that department. But if
Right.
you look specifically at my account, I can tell you what those are in 189 because I budget them there. If you look at 72,510, which is fiscal services, in 189, what that is when Dr. Sullivan presented the changes in the expenditures, that's all benefit specialists that I took on this year. So they don't have a line item for benefit specialists. So I have to put them in 189, which is just categorized as other salary and wage because they don't have a specific line, but they are central office employees as well. So.
All right, and I had one more question I had marked in here. So you're saying these line items would be an individual's salary?
Multiple
At the
people.
top of it, say for instance, let's look at 72,620. So the director of maintenance of the plant is making $720,000.
Yep.
Or
So
proposed?
that's actually that is Trey's salary plus some of his superintendents that he has underneath him. He has project managers and underneath him that also is in that salary line.
So that's multiple persons,
It's
is what I'm
multiple
asking.
people. Usually there is not one line item that has just one singular person in it.
Thank you.
Trey's making that, I may appoint, man.
And great questions, Commissioner Oliver. Thank you. Commissioner Piercy.
If I could, Dr. Sullivan, let's go back and visit the transportation situation with the buses.
Yes, sir.
There's been some talk about 12 new buses being bought. Is that money in this budget? Is it coming out of the budget that you're operating out of today?
It will come out of, it depends on what we find out on Thursday. So Thursday is our drop dead budget, or drop dead deadline for people to sign contracts. I am hoping that I don't have to purchase buses. If we do have to purchase buses, then we will have an amendment that will come out of this budget, out of the contracted vehicle services.
So it's basically not in the budget we're looking at tonight.
It's in this budget, but it's in the contracts with private vehicle owners. Because if we have to purchase 12 buses, it's going to be because we had enough vehicle bus drivers, contractors, not choose to sign their contract. So
I
the
understand
savings is
that
going to
part.
come from that.
Where is the cost at for your drivers, your upkeep for your buses, your insurance on your buses, your insurance on your children? Where is that in this budget?
Insurance actually comes under our county general insurance, and so that's been
Your insurance is in your Board of Education line item.
Board of Education line, and so it's not going to be a large cost increase, which has been a huge point of contention. The rest of that will end up being budgeted amendment from our vehicle contracted owners that we have to amend back in.
That
But
covers
within this line.
your drivers and all.
Yes.
Will your drivers be treated as part-time or full-time employees with benefits?
We're going to try to start part-time, but I don't believe we'll be able to fill them. Been talking to other counties, and then we'll have to do full-time and hopefully be able to use them as, gone blank, cafeteria monitors to be able to offer full-time, depending on what each route is. Some routes may have to be complete full-time routes and do field trips. It's going to depend on each individual one and where that route is.
The numbers I've heard through watching the school board meetings and whatnot, you think maybe 35 was your cutoff on having to buy these buses. You're talking about buying 12 buses. How does that math work? 12 buses can't run 35 routes.
We have priority lists, so the rest of those routes will go out to our current bus transportation contractors who have signed for next year to be able to pick up those additional routes.
So you don't think there's contractors out there that'll take them all?
I hope they will.
I also heard the comment made on one of the school board meetings, go ahead and buy the 12 buses. If we don't need them, we'll just let the schools use them for athletic purposes. I'm being a big favor of that. I think we could probably use the $2 million in this budget somewhere a lot better. That's all I've got to say right now.
Mr. Harris.
Dr. Sullivan, help me out here on special education teachers.
Yes.
How do you come up with the number of teachers and assistants that you need when you're budgeting for a new school? Is this a state study, or are you just basing this on past?
Now, we have it based on the needs of the students, and so we already have number of students and which students are going to that school. And then we have a preliminary, if you have 60 students going there, and I don't have the ratio in front of me. Our sped staff and Dr. Chastain, again, is the one that does all of the staffing ratios. But if you have certain number of kids with certain number of option codes, then, and option codes is I hate to say the severity of the disability that, and the number of service hours that they're receiving each week. And it depends all based on their option code of how many students generate an additional position.
So there's 60 in a middle school, so you're assuming 60 for high school if they're in 8th grade. And then is that how you're coming up with, like on high school, there's going to be so many 6th to 8, or 8th graders that's going in high school?
And it would depend on the high school is going to offer different programs too.
And what's the teacher ratio? Is it still 3 to 1?
For special education,
Yeah.
it's different at each level based on each kid. With TISA, there's not a required teacher ratio anymore.
But do we still have some 1-to-1s?
Oh, absolutely. Lots of them.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand is how you're budgeting that, because that's
It's all based on an
very fluctuating number.
It is, because it's all IEP based, and whatever that IEP team decides is something that we end up having to fund. But when a student leaves our district and they have a 1-to-1, then we move that 1-to-1 student to the new, or that 1-to-1 EA to a new location.
And in what middle, elementary, or high school is the most special ed teachers?
It's all the way across the district.
So it's all the same?
Yeah, we try to offer every program at every school. Campus is different. Campus doesn't necessarily have every program at their school. Some of your smaller schools don't, but everyone else traditionally does.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Irving.
When on Thursday do you have the data?
It won't be till the end of the day, because they have to the end of the day to sign, but I can give you an estimate on where we are.
Because as Commissioner Piercy correctly pointed out, there's a lot to do in a very short period of time if there's not enough bus drivers that sign up. A lot of decisions have to be made very quickly. So is it like 5 o'clock? Not to put too fine a point on it, but
The end of business days, so it would be 4:30.
okay. And if I could follow up briefly, in 71-200, I think you only have one. This is to Commissioner Harris's point. 71-200, line 163. You have one growth special ed EA, and you have no special ed bus EAs.
Correct. Yes.
And
In order to get the deficit down to where it needed to be, like we mentioned, we cut vacant positions. So you will see this has 33 still vacant special education EAs. So to open our new elementary school, we will move vacant EA positions over to the new school. And Dr. Chastain handles all the transfers of positions. For bus aid, we have more than 4 vacant bus positions, and this was pulled back in March. But we're not requesting any growth, but we are going with 4 vacant right now to be able to lower the deficit.
and are those adequate to Chairman Harris and my point?
They're adequate for the students that we know that we have right now, but when you have a changing student demographic all the time, that's why we have to do cleanup amendments throughout the year.
Thank you.
Follow up to Commissioner Pierce's question. Now, where is this, you're planning on having this funding in here for buses? And who's going to be driving them? And if you can insure them, why isn't it that the contractors can get insurance?
There it is. So 72,710 right now we have. In 315, 33.6 million budgeted for next year with contracts with vehicle owners. This current year's budget is 27.1 million. And so if we do not have enough contractors sign contracts, then we will have to do a budget amendment to move from 315 first to be able to purchase vehicles. And some of that, depending on what our end of the year, because we're in the middle of closing our books as well to see what additional revenue we have, would move towards transportation equipment 72,729. And then right now, you do not have a driver's line in here because we don't have drivers. But there is an allowed driver's line in 72,710.
So basically, you're padding this in anticipation of not having,
It is not padded whatsoever. It is
I mean, it's proposed 33.6.
17% increase to the pay table that our board approved for transportation plus $4,000.
And so that's what I'm saying. So you're saying that if
They don't sign if we don't have everyone sign the contracts, then that is where the funding will come from.
that's where you want to
That'll be where it has
anticipate
to come
moving
from.
funds.
Yep. And again, I hope we don't have to, because I don't want to run a different department, a new department. I've said that multiple times. I don't want to run another department.
But then you'll know for sure when, did you
Thursday
say?
night. Thursday night.
You'll know if the contractors are going to sign the,
We had quite a few there today.
And you mentioned a moment ago,
70? Yep, 70 signed today. Out of 3-something, so 70 out of 3-something signed today.
if you,
70?
70 out of 300 signed today.
Oh,
and if I think you said a moment ago, if there's some routes, if there's some that don't sign, there could be a bus contractor
Correct.
who
We'll
could
send,
pick up routes, potentially. I don't know how, buy buses or whatever.
yeah, we'll send it out to our priority list, so then bus drivers, contractors, based on what's in our policy, can pick up new routes.
Have you ever had, well, I'm getting into route. In addition to contracts being approved, do you have any open routes every year? Does every route get bid and occupied by private contractor?
Throughout the year, we have open routes at varying times. Usually they get filled at varying levels, but we do have open routes at different times. Yep.
And my other question, we didn't get to it, I guess, about the insurance piece.
Yes. Yep.
Now, you're saying if you have drivers in buses, you'll be able to insure them.
They are because they're a county employee.
They would be as employees, but we can't do insurance for contractors. They're left to get their own insurance.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct. That's not a county school system decision. That's just is what it is.
Do you know if, in anticipation, and I'm just
Yeah.
going down this rabbit hole, I guess, that maybe would there be the option of hiring some of the current contractors
Absolutely. Yes.
as employees?
Had some reach out to us and said that's what they would like to do,
Gotcha.
which is a different whole unique perspective in and of itself, because then you're competing with contractors, with employees. I mean, it's a,
And then if they do and they already have their own bus, that's less of a bus we'd have to purchase, correct?
they would have to sell their bus to us, and then we have to work on purchasing and procurement and bids, and it's a lot. I think realistically, you are looking at and we've been talking about this for several months with the demand of the original bus raise. That was not a way to fiscally pay for that. And so we have had to look at multiple options, whether it was purchasing buses, having bus contractors fill routes that are not filled by current contractors, and then you add the insurance portion in, and some drivers or contractors just said, I'm not doing it anymore. And that is, of course, their absolute right, and for some of them, I don't blame them. But we're trying to fill as many routes as we possibly can. But I think as we talked at the last Health and Ed meeting, I think it is a very high likelihood that we have some routes not filled to start the school year. Our last step would be that we have to then do an RFP for some big, huge, giant company to come in and fill other routes. And that's not what we want to do, but if we are sitting here in August and we have students who aren't getting transportation, we won't have an option.
Mr. Harris.
Help me out here. So you are aware of the law that Charlie Baum got passed through on independent contractors? Can you explain how this does not help you with the problem that we're having with bus drivers?
I'm not an attorney, so not to
Okay.
that legal understanding, yes. Yep.
Health and Ed, you have heard a Fund 141 presentation. We've delved into positions, transportation otherwise. Any more discussion? Or would anyone consider making a motion? Mr. Wilson, excuse me.
Chairman, just a few thoughts here. I notice overall, in real simple terms, there's a penny of property tax money coming out of what we've been funding 141 with that will be used in the county budget elsewhere. I notice that that's coming down from .5727 down to .5627 in this proposed budget. So, there's where we're seeing some of the property tax money come back for other use. At the same point, the $2.9 million increase they would see in MOE, we have been talking about it for 2 years. In fact, we've been talking about $3 million has been our working amount for months. So I feel like that's something that most of us were aware was coming, and we are going to have another school opening up in a year. So at this point, I feel like that amount of money is almost equaling exactly what the new operating expense of the new school is, in addition to a penny coming out of property tax for use in the county. So I'm appreciative I feel that that's working together. I really do. However, I do think we have a big looming problem in that you will have to make a significant change here in 2 days if you don't have enough contracts. So that is going to really make this a whole different animal. And I think there are some unanswered questions on exactly how you would fund the whole big picture. So the motion I would like to make is I would like to move this forward to budget. Out of health and ed, I would like to move it forward to budget for further consideration. I feel comfortable, this commissioner does, moving it forward, because obviously whatever comes out of budget will come back to full commission for final passage. There will be another opportunity for discussion. I wish we were having this conversation in 2 days from now, because I believe we have, to say just to prove it with positive recommendation, this may really look different in just 48 hours. But I'm comfortable to move it forward to budget, just to keep it moving along. And I wanted to point out the fact that I do recognize the fact that the revenue you're asking for on MOE, in my opinion, we've been talking about for months. And that's going to operating a new school, and there is a penny coming back into general county use. And I know that the mayor's had an opportunity to also look at your budget. So my motion is to move it forward to budget for continued conversation, and we'll see what the results are of your transportation issue.
I'll second that. I do have a question, though, as far as transportation is concerned. Now, with the new schools and everything, do you have buses and routes included in this number that you have on here?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second to forward this to budget for further consideration. And budget can pass, defer, budget will have an opportunity to have that discussion. So motion and a second to move Fund 141 to the Budget Committee. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner McMurray?
Yes.
Commissioner Oliver?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Well, to try to expedite things, I'm going to ask for a motion to either consider 141 tonight or to move it to the 29th. And I'll entertain that motion now or discussion from the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to move this till the 29th.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on moving this to the 29th? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We will be looking at 177 and 141 on May the 29th at 5:30. At that time, we will also be reviewing the rest of our budgets for publication. So we may have a busy night, but please do your homework between here and there, Chairman.
I have nothing else under other business for Health and Ed. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn for Health and Ed. Health and Ed is adjourned.
There being no other business for budget, we're adjourned.
Thanks, Robert. Thank you.